In 1968, Czechoslovakia experienced a remarkable period known as the Prague Spring, a time of political liberalization and social reform that captured the hopes of its citizens. Under the leadership of Alexander Dubček, the movement sought to create socialism with a human face, promoting greater freedom of expression, press, and political pluralism. This wave of optimism, however, was short-lived. Just months later, the Soviet Union, fearing the spread of reformist ideas, invaded Czechoslovakia in August 1968, effectively crushing the movement and reinstating a more oppressive regime. Understanding the Prague Spring and the subsequent Soviet invasion is crucial for grasping the broader context of the Cold War. This period was marked by intense ideological battles between the East and West, and Czechoslovakia's struggle for autonomy highlighted the fragility of freedom in a divided Europe. The events of 1968 not only shaped the future of Czechoslovakia, but also served as a poignant reminder of the lengths to which superpowers would go to maintain control over their satellite states. In this video, we will delve deeper into the significance of the Prague Spring, exploring its impact on Czechoslovakia and the lasting lessons it offers about the pursuit of freedom in the face of oppression. Join us as we uncover this pivotal moment in history. Background of the Prague Spring. Leading up to the Prague Spring, Czechoslovakia was entrenched in a political and social climate marked by repression and discontent. After World War II, the country fell under Soviet influence, resulting in a strict communist regime that stifled individual freedoms and suppressed dissent. However, by the mid-1960s, economic stagnation and public dissatisfaction began to mount, creating a fertile ground for change. Enter Alexander Dubček, who became the first secretary of the Communist Party in January 1968. Dubček recognized the urgent need for reform and initiated a series of liberalizing measures aimed at revitalizing the economy and society. His vision included greater freedom of the press, the decentralization of government, and the introduction of democratic elements within the communist framework. These reforms resonated deeply with the populace, who yearned for a more open and democratic society. The public's response to Dubček's liberalization efforts was overwhelmingly positive. Citizens took to the streets, expressing their hopes for a brighter future through peaceful demonstrations and cultural expressions. The atmosphere was electric with optimism, as people believed they could finally reclaim their rights and reshape their nation. This collective aspiration for freedom and democracy set the stage for the dramatic events that would soon unfold during the Prague Spring. Key events of the Prague Spring. The Prague Spring of 1968 was characterized by a series of significant events that marked a turning point in Czechoslovak history. In January, Alexander Dubček's appointment as first secretary ignited a wave of reforms aimed at liberalizing the political landscape. By March, the government had introduced measures to allow greater freedom of speech and press, leading to a flourishing of cultural expression. Public demonstrations began to emerge, with citizens rallying in support of these reforms, eager to embrace a new era of openness. The media played a crucial role in this movement, acting as a catalyst for change. Newspapers and magazines began to publish articles that challenged the status quo, spreading the reformist message far and wide. This newfound freedom of the press allowed for a vibrant exchange of ideas, fostering a sense of unity among the populace as they collectively envisioned a more democratic society. However, as the reforms gained momentum, tensions with the Soviet Union escalated. The Kremlin viewed Dubček's liberalization efforts as a direct threat to its control over Eastern Europe. By July, Soviet leaders began to express their concerns, warning that Czechoslovakia's path could lead to instability in the region. This growing friction foreshadowed the dramatic events that would unfold in August, ultimately culminating in the Soviet invasion that would bring the Prague Spring to a tragic end. The Soviet response. The Soviet Union's reaction to the Prague Spring reforms was marked by deep-seated fears about the potential spread of liberalism throughout Eastern Europe. Soviet leadership, particularly under Leonid Brezhnev, viewed the liberalization efforts in Czechoslovakia as a direct challenge to their authority and a threat to the stability of the communist bloc. They were concerned that if Czechoslovakia successfully implemented reforms, it could inspire similar movements in other satellite states, undermining Soviet control. In response to these fears, the Brezhnev Doctrine was articulated, which asserted that the Soviet Union had the right to intervene in any socialist country where the ruling party was threatened by internal or external forces. This doctrine justified the use of military force to maintain the status quo in Eastern Europe, reinforcing the idea that any deviation from the Soviet model of governance would not be tolerated. To curb the reforms, the USSR initially attempted diplomatic measures, engaging in discussions with Dubček and other Czechoslovak leaders. However, these efforts were largely ineffective, as the reformists remained committed to their vision of a more open society. As tensions escalated and the situation became increasingly untenable, the Soviet leadership ultimately decided that military intervention was the only viable option to restore control, leading to the invasion in August 1968 that would end the Prague Spring. As tensions escalated in the summer of 1968, the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies began a significant military build-up in preparation for an invasion of Czechoslovakia. In the weeks leading up to August 20th, troops and tanks were mobilized along the borders, and joint military exercises were conducted, all under the guise of routine maneuvers. This show of force was a clear signal to the Czechoslovak leadership that the Soviet Union was prepared to take drastic measures to quash the reform movement. On the night of August 20th, 1968, the invasion was executed with precision. Soviet and Warsaw Pact forces crossed the borders, swiftly occupying key cities, including Prague. The operation was met with shock and disbelief by the Czechoslovak population, who had hoped for a peaceful resolution to the tensions. Many citizens took to the streets in protest, facing the overwhelming military presence with courage and defiance. However, the invasion quickly suppressed any organized resistance. The immediate impact on the Czechoslovak government was profound. Dubček and other reformist leaders were arrested and taken to Moscow, where they were pressured to retract their liberal policies. The invasion shattered the hopes of the populace for a more democratic society, plunging the nation back into a period of repression and fear. The events of August 1968 marked a turning point, solidifying the Soviet grip on Czechoslovakia and stifling aspirations for reform for years to come. The Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia in August 20th, 1968 had profound short-term and long-term effects that reverberated throughout the nation and beyond. In the immediate aftermath, the Prague Spring reforms were swiftly suppressed. The liberal policies championed by Alexander Dubček were rolled back, and a hardline communist regime was reinstated, leading to a period of political repression known as normalization. This crackdown stifled dissent and curtailed freedoms, forcing many intellectuals, artists and activists into exile or silence. The impact on Czechoslovak society and culture was significant. The invasion instilled a sense of disillusionment and fear among the populace, leading to a culture of conformity and self-censorship. However, it also sparked a resilient underground movement that sought to preserve the spirit of the Prague Spring through samizdat literature and clandestine artistic expression. This resistance laid the groundwork for future dissent and eventual change in the late 1980s. On a broader scale, the invasion had important implications for Cold War dynamics. It reinforced the divide between East and West, demonstrating the lengths to which the Soviet Union would go to maintain control over its satellite states. The event also galvanized Western perceptions of the Soviet threat, influencing international relations and contributing to the eventual rise of dissident movements across Eastern Europe. The legacy of the Prague Spring and the subsequent Soviet invasion is profound and enduring, influencing future dissident movements across Eastern Europe. The events of 1968 inspired a generation of activists who sought to challenge oppressive regimes, demonstrating that the desire for freedom and democracy could not be easily extinguished. The courage displayed by Czechoslovak citizens during the Prague Spring became a symbol of resistance, motivating movements in countries like Poland, Hungary, and East Germany, ultimately contributing to the broader wave of change that swept through the region in the late 1980s. The Prague Spring also played a crucial role in shaping European history. It highlighted the tensions within the Soviet bloc and exposed the vulnerabilities of authoritarian regimes. The invasion served as a stark reminder of the lengths to which the Soviet Union would go to maintain control, reinforcing the ideological divide that characterized the Cold War. This period of repression laid the groundwork for the eventual collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe, culminating in the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Today, discussions about freedom and democracy in the region continue to reflect on the lessons of the Prague Spring. The events of 1968 serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance in protecting democratic values and the ongoing struggle for human rights, inspiring new generations to advocate for liberty and justice in their societies. In summary, the Prague Spring of 1968 stands as a pivotal moment in Czechoslovak history, representing a bold attempt to embrace reform and liberalization under Alexander Dubček's leadership. However, this hopeful period was abruptly halted by the Soviet invasion, which not only suppressed the aspirations of the Czechoslovak people, but also reinforced the authoritarian grip of the Soviet Union over Eastern Europe. The events of that year serve as a powerful reminder of the ongoing struggle for freedom and democracy, influencing future dissident movements and shaping the trajectory of European history. Key takeaways for viewers to remember include the importance of understanding the context of the Cold War, the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression, and the lasting impact of the Prague Spring on contemporary discussions about rights and freedoms. These lessons remain relevant today as societies continue to grapple with issues of governance and individual liberties. If you found this exploration of the Prague Spring and its consequences insightful, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. Don't forget to like this video and share it with others who might be interested in learning about this significant chapter in history. Your support helps us continue to bring you valuable discussions and insights.